All right. Okay, so let's start. So yeah, this lecture is going to be about how I use ChatGPT for my day-to-day task as an academic. And a lot of these will be around like research use cases, reading, writing, and things like that. Reading, I showed you how I use Notebook LM. But for other tasks, this is going to show you how, I use them. Again, like here, the important thing is not my specific use cases. Obviously, you may not really connect with these, or you need to use them for these, but try to find inspiration and try to see, if you can use it in your own use cases. Okay, firstly, I mean, when ChatGPT came out, like this was one of the first questions. Okay, should I use ChatGPT? Especially as an academic, like, for me and, my colleagues were really wondering if we should tell students whether they should or should not use. And a lot of people just said, oh, yeah, you should not use ChatGPT. But the reality is, uh, either for me or for a lot of the students, this is not the question, right? Should I use ChatGPT is not the question. It's just should I tell everyone that I'm using ChatGPT? And the reality is like everyone is using it. And it's no longer navel gazing and trying to say oh yeah, these don't work, or I don't use them, or whatever. I don't really believe in that, or at least if you're doing that, I would really urge you not to do that. So like everyone is using it, like maybe not everyone, but we should also use it. And in general, in the academic space at least, there's this sort of spectrum. This is probably a few years old, or maybe a year old or so, but I still know if you have people on either end of the spectrum. Like, so for instance, okay, there's this sort of and I still have colleagues, and I know people who have these sorts of views, which is like, oh, it's useless, it's all hallucination, I don't use it at all, and it's all just advanced autocomplete. On the other end of the spectrum, there are people like, oh, humans are done, like ChatGPTs are taking off, whatever, ChatGPT is going to take away all jobs, and we don't have jobs tomorrow, or AGI is here, things like that. And so there are people somewhere in the middle, like who are like, okay, I'm going to use it, but I don't use it for these kinds of tasks because, for instance, I don't know, it'll pollute my thought process, or it'll not help my students learn things. Again, like this is correct, like that is true, but the reality is the kinds of efficiency gains we get from using these, or like just telling ourselves that our students are not using it. Or like asking them not to use it is not the reality. Like again, we get these sort of productivity gains in using it, that we should be using them for. So I am somewhere here, right? Like somewhere on the other side where, and you've seen this throughout the course on my take is, okay, AI is very, very important, and we should not really at least go anywhere towards this other side, or hopefully I convince you not to be on this side but more on this side. Okay, so it's just a tool, and obviously, if I don't know, a cell phone is influencing your mind, will you stop using a cell phone? And again, like there are people who in the beginning were like, okay, I'm not using a smartphone, and they've held and held and held, and probably in the 2025, like there's like very, very few people who still don't use a smartphone, right? Like, and everyone has moved on, and that's going to happen with AI, and there's no point in like resisting it. It's going to happen. It'll get better. I mean, whatever complaints you have, it'll only get better. And we need to prepare ourselves for this future. Like, I think one of the main things that we underestimate at this point is that future, and this is already happening. There's lots of work. And there's this very nice article in Economist. I'll probably link it in the on Canvas. Is about how people who are know how to use these tools have an edge, and it's also this sort of rich get richer phenomena. And we should also be preparing ourselves, and we're probably this course is in part helpful in that sense. It'll help you prepare for this thing of like cognitive automation, where where what the AI can do and what you should ask the AI to do versus what you should do yourself and what you should train yourself in. Um, it's also easy and dangerous to overestimate the capabilities of LLMs, and it's also easy to underestimate, like things like the way they have improved over the last few years, both in terms of efficiencies, but also in the cost reduction of costs and all of that stuff. Is really, really, really impressive. And like so, if this trend continues, or even just is slightly slowed down, like we will be getting much, much more intelligent AI pretty soon, and we should be prepared for it. Uh, so they have an increasingly comparative advantage in generating content, and humans have this sort of comparative advantage in evaluating and discriminating content. So again, like this is where we should try to be prepared for areas where we can delegate, and a lot of our jobs as information professionals is about where do we make use of these resources to do our job better, and that is what I want to show you today. Especially given these models' ability to encode huge amounts of information, not just text, from the internet and from other sources, and like yeah, these sorts of micro tasks which are repetitive, or like that don't require a lot of thinking, or that can help you in assisting you very well. Like for instance, writing tasks, some of them I'd show you examples of. They are really good examples that we should use ChatGPT for, or any of these other tools. And again, it takes some time to get used to them. Do not make again, this is not my own opinion. Obviously, this is one of my opinions, but um, many others have told me this, or like have expressed this on social media and other places. If you use ChatGPT and you had a bad experience, it's most likely an outlier. You will definitely find use cases where it can be helpful. So don't say you've tried it and you don't like it or things like that. That's I think not the right frame of mind to think about this. So I show you some examples of how I use ChatGPT, and some of these might be super trivial, like you might say, okay, why is this guy showing me these? But maybe the idea is, if you are still holding up, or like it gives you some sort of inspiration in trying to use these in special ways that you it might benefit you. Again, I'm not going to show you, okay, this is how you answer your assignments or whatever. Like that's very specific to your use case. This is all my use cases, but the idea is how it can be potentially helpful for you, that you should be thinking about. And none of these are groundbreaking or super new. Again, these are probably, some of these are from like 2 years ago also. Maybe they're trivial, but hopefully not all of them. Obviously, one of the very, very important things is over reliance on AI. You don't want AI to be your boss one day. You should always be the boss. And we talked about alignment and all of that stuff. Like the first thing is okay, just saying okay, AI is as good as doing my tasks, then it'll obviously replace you. You should always try to think about how you are the boss. And there's lots of research on this. There's multiple papers that show this, especially in the learning education context, especially in your type of context. People are so convinced by the power of these that it can really harm learning, basically because of over reliance. So don't let that happen. Uh, Obviously, these are not really, some, divine intervention that you should follow. Yeah, yeah, if you could or not, like it's not like you should definitely do these. They're just guiding examples, and a lot of these are structured by various other sources. Like I'll provide some of the sources at the end of this talk, like ChatGPT. I'm just copying from others and just reproducing it, probably in a much more structured way or something like that. And primarily, it's from one of these papers from the National Bureau of Economic Research, was published there by this guy Anton Kornick, professor. Um, Okay, so what do I use it for, especially in the academic space? I'll show you also, I mean, there's going to be a video on other fun tasks that I do use AI for, like outside of work. And so in work, so like I said, part of or majority of my job as a professor is about doing research, and research involves, like we saw in the other AI scientist video, a lot of things about thinking and writing and reading and all that kind of stuff. So things like these, like ideation, so thinking, getting feedback, writing, background research, understanding what others have done in this space, data analysis, coding, and programming. So I'll show you examples of how I use it for each of these. So for brainstorming, so these are examples from that paper, the NBER paper, but now I can show you also examples how I use it. So brainstorm economic channels through which advances in AI may increase inequality. Okay, it'll give you some ideas. And so if you do this today, some of the ideas that are given are like, okay, not really path breaking, but they're on topic, largely reasonable, and span a wide range of what I could think myself, even as an expert in some of these areas. Uh, um, okay, I don't know, calling myself an expert, but even as someone who might know some things about this, there are sometimes things that surprise you. Maybe it's as you get into some of these very niche topics where you probably know better, it maybe does like 1 in 10 of those are useful, but whatever, right? Like you spend like 30 seconds just doing this and quickly looking at it, and if it's helpful, it's helpful. If it's not, it's not. Like, but the main thing is that this is sort of a cognitive offloading, like where you try to think of something, and then you have limits to your own thinking power, and you're trying to use some sort of help from this AI that can also help you in this sort of brainstorming. Let's look at this example. So. Yeah, this is from that browser use example that I showed you earlier. So let's remove this and let's check which one of these is the. So this one is yeah. So this is one idea, right? Like so here, the prompt is quite huge. Basically, what I did is it's an iterative prompt. Like so, what I first did is I have a rough idea. Like so, the idea is about using data from uh, uh, um, so yeah, using data from Google Street View and trying to correlate that with various digital data that we have. So does where a person lives actually affect the types of information they consume and how they consume it, and like various other downstream things like political polarization and other kinds of things like that. So basically here I asked, so I have an idea already that I have this data, which is, digital data, so social media data that people have, and I know where they live, and so I know, the locality and how it looks through Google Street View. So now I want to see if there's a connection. And I have some ideas already on like how I want to do this, but again, this is a way I can just put it here and I'll ask it, okay, what do you think? Like, give me some ideas, and give me some ideas. Give me all of these like really useless things, which are like, okay, collect this type of data, and this is how you do it, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, so, okay. Then I just dumped it onto this other, like, so I got an output from ChatGPT, and then I dumped it here, and I said, okay, I can think of these ideas when I connect and correlate demographics from WhatsApp with Google Street View. Example, how clean the locality is and things like that. But I'm not able to get a clear, innovative idea connecting this with digital data consumption. Like, so it's a very specific thing, but you can see the process, right? Like, so I I have an initial idea, then I put it, I got some more ideas, but then I said, okay, this is not enough. Like, this does not really make this sort of connection. Uh, can you think deeply and give me more ideas, right? Like, and then yeah, so this is this deep research feature, which is like detailed insights on any topic. So this is apparently, takes a lot of time and like thinks through, takes like 20-30 minutes and thinks through and gets you some output. So this is supposed to be good. So then it asked me some questions. Okay, what do you think? And then I said, okay, I briefly answered what I want. And then, okay, it just took 3 minutes and looked at 8 sources. But it gave me this very, very, very detailed view. And then, I said, okay, give me like a summary of it for like some credits that I'm applying for, all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's not related here. but I mean that we'll get back to later. Like, we can take this sort of very large thing and summarize it, like get like an abstract or a tweet or things like that as well. But as you can see, like, this gives me all of these different kinds of thinking, and then it cites some of this work, and good thing is it cited some of my own work. Um, but I mean, yeah. So this is one area where it might be helpful. Um, right? Like another is evaluating ideas. So, maybe, I read that and I find like, a couple of them, but I want to connect them together, or I have another idea and I want to evaluate it, right? So something like this. I'm writing a paper on the effects of AI on inequality. What do you think is more useful? A paper on how AI increases inequality or how it reduces inequality. So again, like I know the answer to some of these, right? As an area expert, like I'm doing research on this, I know maybe that AI increases inequality, whatever. I have a hypothesis, but I'm asking it as a devil's advocate to try to see, give me these uh, counterintuitive arguments, and some of these are really good, like that will change your thinking sometimes on like, okay, yeah, maybe I should incorporate this. These sorts of, like, again, like in the worst case the ideas are shit and we don't use them, that's fine, like whatever, it takes 5 minutes of your time. But in the best case you get like a really interesting take that kind of shapes your entire framing or whatever. So these are very, very helpful, right? The third is also providing counter arguments. So you can say, okay, this is my thinking. What am I missing? Right? Like this is another area that people use it a lot for. Uh, and so this is the table. This is in that paper, LLMs Learn to Collaborate and Reason by Professor Korinek. Uh, and you can see here, like for ideation feedback, they're using it also for three tasks: brainstorming, feedback, and counter arguments. For brainstorming, I mean, the more fuller this black circle is, that means it's more useful. Brainstorming, it's really useful. For feedback and providing counter arguments, it's maybe half and half, like hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, the next example is on writing. So how I use LLMs for writing. So writing is one of the core competences of LLMs, right? So they're designed to produce text that can help you like write in perfect English, all of that stuff. So obviously for a class, like especially talking to students, I want to say this, I need to say this. I absolutely don't want someone to say, oh, Kiran told me to use ChatGPT and generate my assignments or whatever. Don't do that. As you saw, like over reliance on these and not learning, not using these the right way will really hurt you. Like, so, once, for instance, these things are taken away from you, or like if you have to do your own thinking, like then it'll really affect your academic quality. So one of the main things that I use it for is this sort of bullet points to paragraphs. This used to be one of my biggest things that took a lot of time. So again, like I can think of these when I'm writing. I have an idea that I can think of and structure, right? Like something like this, right? So there are these points that I wrote. So large language models automate cognitive tasks. Work of communication scholars is largely cognitive. I don't have examples right now in my head, so I said, okay, add examples. Communication scholars, therefore, worry about recent progress in language models. In the short run, these models help us to be more productive. So this is the kind of argument that I want to make. And if I want to really write this, right, like so, my biggest block, writer's block used to be going from this to a coherent set of paragraphs. And an LLM is like unbelievably good at this. And this saves like, hours for me and also potentially for many others, right? Like, so where going from these like thoughts to paragraphs is like much easier, right? Like, and you can also say add anything I might have missed. And so focus on the ideas, not on the writing process itself. Of course, you need to edit later, you need to read and edit later. It's always a bit sterile and lacks idiosyncrasies and elements of surprise, especially now that we've been through this for like a couple of years, people can easily tell if you just copy paste LLM written text that is obvious. People can tell, especially. I mean, again, there's also research on this space that shows that if you are a user of an LLM, you can easily tell what is LLM generated. Again, I'm using it all the time, so I know how it looks. And if someone, a student copies their assignment or an email that they write to me from an LLM, you can easily tell. So let's look at an example of how I just use this this way just today. So basically, I have this idea. So I was submitting this abstract to this conference, and so I have this idea. So this is like the actual idea, and I want a 300-word abstract. So basically, it's just in terms of structuring these into different paragraphs and giving me an abstract. So it gave me this abstract, right? Like, so, which is really good. And another thing that we'll see is also it suggests titles. Again, these titles are junk. Like, I don't use them anymore. I used to do that, but now at least I'm taking inspiration. So in the end, I just use part of this title for the submission, but it was LLM generated. But as you can see, going from this, right, like, so where I wrote these bullet points to something like this, right? Like, which is already it is adding this sort of context. So it says LLMs have rapidly advanced. These sorts of things are take a long time to get perfectly right, like, when you're writing yourself. But then what I did is I actually edited this. And then, so I think I added, yeah, some of these, like, it didn't give this. So I edited this and I told it, okay, can you mention that we are actually using a data set of WhatsApp conversations and identifying this? It's a political science conference, so the focus should also be about political. And then it gave me another, maybe this is the final version, I don't remember. But so there was a bunch of back and forth. And then I had another, yeah, comment. So there was lots of bunch of back and forth. And now with this sort of canvas tool, I can make these edits here. Um, and then yeah, then I submitted this, or like I made some edits here and then submitted. But again, like, going from this to this is probably, I don't know, a 2 3 hour task for me, and now it took me like 30 minutes maybe. That's like 2.5 hours saved, right? Like, so that's a huge benefit. uh, so then, okay, are these other interesting things that you can do. Things like, check the following sentence for grammar, or, this is what the paper does. Can you explain me, the main corrections you did, and things like that, especially for non-native English speakers. If you write something, you can ask it to spell check or do a better job and things like that. Again, focus on the thinking, not on writing. Writing in itself is probably, especially if you have your thoughts properly structured and formatted, I think getting that to written text, which is, I mean, it requires some sort of practice also to not be robotic and appear all of that stuff. Like, but having a first draft used to be a huge blocker for me. Now it's no longer a blocker. Okay, you can also say rewrite the following text so it's comprehensible to an undergraduate student. These kinds of things you can use it for. What are the main stylistic shortcomings of the following text in an academic writing context? So if you can do it right now, like, you can say, I can put this, and then let's see, it'll give you some useful stuff. Um, so let's see what it does. So this is, ChatGPT 4.5. So it says, the main outcomes. So this is, in an informal tone. Again, like, I know what are the shortcomings of this, or I am cognizant enough that, I know what these are, right? Like, so it says excessive use of first person. Okay, that's correct. Like, maybe, it would be better to use a neutral style, like a third person or a passive voice. That's actually something that I did not think about. Okay, informal conversation too. I want it to be informal, so maybe, okay, I don't care. It's vague, maybe not, like, I don't care about that. So, as you can see, gave me a bunch of reasons, but I would say, okay, most of these are not useful, but this is useful, right? This is not something I thought about, so I will use that in my um, when I'm changing my writing. So let's check. Can you rewrite these paragraphs to correct the shortcomings? So you can say, okay, I only want this shortcoming to be addressed. Can you rewrite it? And then you can also say which argument is the hardest to follow. And then, yeah, this is another thing I use it for. But again, this is really bad. Like I would really say the suggestions have gotten, I mean, not gotten, but they are again like this sort of templated. So usually there's this sort of a, if A is done, then do like, A colon B kind of structure. And I also have some analysis that shows that, many people are using this. So that you don't use it, but it's very good for inspiration. Again, I used to spend a lot of time coming up with these titles, and now I just get a 10 of these examples, and then I pick, one, two, three, and then I'll say, okay, I'll get use these words from here, these words from here. I'll really get a lot of inspiration from this. So this is another thing that I'm using it for. Generating tweets to promote a paper. Again, this is really shit. Like if you use it out of the box, like, but you can get inspiration from it. Like again, I'm 100% sure. Like I can tell, like people who are using these for tweets has this sort of very templated like a way of generating tweets. Has these sorts of specific emojis. Has these specific useless hashtags and all that stuff. So don't copy paste, obviously, again, but for getting initial drafts, this is very good. Summarizing text, LLMs are unbelievably good. Summarize the following. You can have a large piece of text and summarize. They're really good for helping you. Either, like for instance, what I do also usually is I write introduction and I say based on this, give me an abstract. So it just gives me a summary that I can use to start editing my abstract, for instance. So in terms of writing, LLMs are unbelievably helpful, like synthesizing, editing, evaluating, generating titles and headlines. There are these other things like this is very specific to some sort of special handwritten equation, and you want to convert that into a formula that you want to put in your LaTeX or whatever. They're very good. So those sorts of things, it's really good. So let's stop it here, and we'll get to the rest in another video.